Well, good day to everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Hope everybody had a great weekend, and those of you that were able to watch the Super Bowl, hopefully your team won. From a neutral standpoint, it was kind of a boring Super Bowl, but nonetheless, it is the way it is. So I know that many of you probably paid attention to that. So welcome. And today is our final installment of our series of 4 in the area of our hybrid Active Directory infrastructure. And what we've been focusing on is a lot of concepts around security and monitoring of changes that go on both within your on-premise Active Directory environment as well as in the cloud in Azure Active Directory. And today we're going to finish up focusing on Azure Active Directory and the changes that occur within Azure Active Directory. As I've been telling you throughout this series, I think all of us are becoming more and more proficient within Azure Active Directory. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to focus on and try to get solutions to you like I have over the years with on-premise Active Directory. And I will be completely honest and tell you that in a hybrid Active Directory environment is not an easy thing. And for those of you that have been dabbling with this, know that. So hopefully I can shed some light on some things that will allow you to have a better view into when things change in Azure itself. As some logistics, this is being recorded. So if you keep an eye out for your email in the next day or two, you should receive a link to the recording of this webinar. We highly encourage that you share that link with others, whether it be in your organization or other colleagues. Really, the whole purpose of our webinars and all of our content is to help the Active Directory environment. So we encourage you to share it and freely give it to other people so they can hopefully learn some information as well and fill those gaps in knowledge. So it is being recorded. Keep an eye out for that. We do have some others working with me. You won't hear them, but certainly they're there. If you use your GoToWebinar panel, you can post your questions and get answers in line. So please do that as we go through the material if you do have any questions. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions, which is rare, but we will be sending you an email an answer to those questions that are outstanding if we finish with our time before we can get to all the questions. So that, I think, deals with the logistics. As far as who I am, my name is Derek Melber. I am the Chief Technology Evangelist for the AD Solutions team here at ManageEngine. And really what that means is I get the great opportunity to travel the world, talking with administrators, talking with organizations about how to better administer efficiently and secure your Active Directory environments. I have been an MVP now for, gosh, I think this is my 18th or 19th year. I've been an MVP both in Active Directory and group policy. Currently, I'm on the Active Directory side of things, but I have written a couple of books on group policy for Microsoft Press, as well as I was a group policy MVP for, oh boy, probably 8 or 9 years. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I do want to talk about some resources that we have available for you online. All of these resources are absolutely free, but I think they're extremely valuable for you. If you happen to just go to ManageEngine.com and hover over company, you'll see that we have these blogs. And we try to blog every single week. Usually we try to blog a couple of times a week. And again, if you come in here and let's say that you want to do a search on hybrid. You can come in here, do a search on hybrid, and we'll have dedicated blogs for you with hybrid Active Directory information for you. So, you know, we try to get you information that will help you better administer your Active Directory environment. So come in here, do your searches, and hopefully you can find some additional information that you need. So that's the first resource. The second resource is a little bit hidden. If you come into our main landing page and you hover over products, at the very bottom of this page, you'll see security hardening for Active Directory. This is a site that was built, I guess, about 3 years ago. And it was built in kind of an answer to Microsoft technologies that they had been building, which are now part of Azure, which are privilege management solutions. And at the time, these were very infantile and weren't used that much. And even now today, I'm not finding that organizations are using it that heavily. And the technologies I'm talking about are just-in-time, JIT, and just-enough access, JIA. And these technologies are, from what I have found, to be extremely complicated and very difficult to manage and implement. And over the years, I've been talking about JIT and JIA. I've only seen about 4 organizations that actually have kind of bought into this idea of JIT and JIA. So with that track record, we here at the AD Solutions team wanted to give you, the organizations that weren't using JIT and JIA, an answer to privilege management. So we built this website. And this website is really dedicated to security of all aspects of your environment. If I were to look at what this website does, it is going to help you secure Active Directory, and it's going to help you be more compliant. I've been teaching compliancy to Deloitte and Touche, or I guess it's just Deloitte now, as well as PwC and the like for years, and I've always told them not to worry about any compliance specifically in general, because most organizations in the US have so many compliance regulations. But if you actually just secure your environment, you're much better off. So if you come in here and you pick a particular area, like Active Directory groups are part of any compliance regulation, and you go through and you actually work through these blogs and secure all these areas, well, this is the way that you can become secure and compliant. Now, what we're doing right now is we're actually molding all of these areas into short videos. So instead of being something that you read, you're going to click and you're going to see a short video of me doing the actual action and how to do it in the environment. So keep an eye out for that. I was hoping to get it done by January, but now I'm hoping to get it done by March. But regardless, the information that's currently here with regard to all these security areas is rock solid and something that you should be taking full advantage of. A final resource that I want to point you to on our website is actually our Securing Privileged Access and Active Directory Dummies book. This book was written about 2 years ago and is extraordinary in how it describes the importance of privileged access and how to secure it. Many of you that are on this webinar know exactly how to secure privileged access, but many others in your organization don't, or they don't understand the importance of securing privileged access. So this is just a resource for you. Download it anywhere that you see this icon on the website, get a PDF, share the PDF, and hopefully everyone in the next couple of months or hopefully year will be up to speed on privileged access and know the importance so that we can actually bear down and secure this environment. So those are some resources that are available from our website. A final resource I want to point you to is my actual email address. On the AD Solutions team, all of us love to receive emails, love to receive questions that you're struggling with, whether it be directly related to Active Directory or other parts of your Windows environment. As an MVP, I know a lot of other people that know a lot of information, and if I don't know the answer, hopefully I can get you someone that can get you the answer to your problem. So please email us, and we'd be more than happy to tackle those problems for you. Unfortunately, my slide does say 2018, but I do want to talk about our 2019 World Tour. This will be our 5th year of doing our World Tour of AD seminars, and these are just fantastic for you to attend. Bring your questions, bring your open slate to learn about how to solve different things in your environment. We sit down in about November of the year and put together the next year of topics. This year in 2019, we're going to be covering everything from user behavior analytics to multi-factor authentication to hybrid Active Directory to SIM solutions, correlation. You name it, we're going to be tackling it. I have really been thinking for the last couple of months that 2019 is gearing up to be a year of technology, and it's pretty exciting to have something like this. Last year we really focused a lot on GDPR, and this year we're focusing on a lot of these security areas, especially within a hybrid Active Directory environment, and that's very exciting for new technology. So please come join us for these events. They're normally half a day. You come in, it's all solution based, and you walk out with a list of actions that you can do in your environment to hopefully improve what you're working on back at the office. So that gives you an idea of what's available. So now let's jump into our topic for today. And what we're going to talk about is Azure Active Directory and change monitoring. But I want to give you an honest view. As I learn about Azure Active Directory and I try to decrypt everything that's going on, I think it's important to see different things that are available in Azure Active Directory. So I stumbled upon some really good, I guess, details about what Azure is and what Azure isn't. So this is directly from the Microsoft website and what Azure Active Directory is. So Azure Active Directory is going to help your employees sign on and access resources. Now, the resources can be one of two places. They can be internal or they can be external. If they're internal, they're going to be basically things that are on your network that you've been doing for the last 20 years, right? So basically your applications that are running on-prem, okay? Now, you could have cloud-based applications that are developed by your own organization. Those could also be ways that you're controlling access to them. But what's new, of course, is the cloud, the external resources, such as cloud-based applications, Office 365, the Azure portal, thousands of other software as a service applications. So what Microsoft is defining is basically the same thing that you've had on-prem, but now it's going to expand into the cloud, okay? Now, Azure Active Directory can require multi-factor authentication, and here's the important part, when accessing organizational resources, okay? So multi-factor authentication from a Microsoft point of view is for the cloud, all right? Azure Active Directory can automate user provisioning between everything, as according to Microsoft. Now, I have found that this really isn't that true because there's a lot of moving parts that you have to put in place. Yes, it at the end can automate, but a lot of it's PowerShell and it's extremely complicated, but it is possible, okay? So this is what Microsoft is saying that Azure Active Directory is. Now, what's interesting is I just stumbled upon this, what Azure Active Directory is not. Azure Active Directory is not designed to be the cloud version of Active Directory. That is a direct quote from a Microsoft product manager. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because if we think about today, most of us living in a hybrid environment. And we started with on-prem Active Directory, right? We had our domain controllers. We knew everything that was going on. We had our back office services, DNS, DHCP. Everything's running. We knew replication, and we functioned. And then Microsoft said, hey, we have this thing called Office 365. People started to use it, but in order to have Office 365, you have to have Azure AD. You cannot use your on-prem Active Directory. So people bought into Office 365 and they enabled Azure Active Directory. By enable Azure Active Directory, they wanted to make sure that it's synchronized with their on-prem. So boom, we had a hybrid Active Directory environment. At some point, Microsoft is going to push us and they want us to be inside of Azure completely. We're not going to get there that fast, but once we do move to Azure Active Directory, Microsoft is telling us it's not the cloud version of Active Directory. So this becomes a little confusing, right? It's not a domain controller or a directory in the cloud that's going to provide the same capabilities. That would be nice, but it's not going to do that. And Azure Active Directory cannot migrate your computers, group policies, OUs from on-prem Active Directory. So in my opinion, this is a little bit contradictory from where we've been the last 20 years to where Microsoft wants us to be. Because I would think that if they want us to move to the cloud-based environment, we would want it to be similar to what we've been dealing with for 20 years, but it's not that situation, which is, I think, part of the issues that many of us are having as we try to kind of get a hold of this hybrid world and try to management the same way that we've been managing on-prem. Now, another thing I want to talk about are the licensing structure, because I've been really struggling with this as I try to unlock certain features within Azure. Azure has 4 different levels, actually 5, but I'm going to focus on 4 of them. The first one is free, right? This provides user and group management, directory synchronization, basic reports, Now, keep that in mind as I move through this. And single sign-on across Azure Office 365 and many popular SaaS apps, okay? So the free version gives you basic, what I would call, but there's a basic level as well, which is free, plus it gives you cloud-centric app access. Now we can deal with groups. We have self-service password reset for cloud applications, okay? Then we have this Azure AD application proxy, okay, which allows us to do things with on-premise web apps. So it gives us one step further. Notice the basic does not add any more reports, okay? And it only gets us to self-service password reset for cloud apps. If you want to get to the higher level, you go to Premium 1 and Premium 2. Premium 1 brings in hybrid users access on-prem and cloud. You have advanced administration. So here's where you move into the self-service password reset for on-premise users. Now, we are not going to get into this today, but part of our AD road tour, our AD seminars, is going to include this exact topic. I can tell you absolutely 100% that this wording is not really correct, okay? The way that it works in P1 or P2 of Azure Active Directory is the user is going to change their password in Azure Active Directory, and it will write back the password to on-prem, okay? Now, I want to expose right now an issue with this, because this is one of the confusing aspects of a hybrid environment. The onset, the user must authenticate to their computer. They do not do that with Azure Active Directory. They do that with on-prem Active Directory, okay? So, user walks up to their computer at their desk, Control-Delete, log on. That log on is being authenticated with Active Directory on-prem. If they want to expose the self-service password reset, they then go to Azure and do the self-service password reset there, which is in a browser. But wait a minute. If I don't know what my password is on-prem, how do I get to my browser? That's a problem, isn't it? It's a major problem. Microsoft's solution, go to your buddy's computer and do it there. Wow. That's their solution. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole issues with that and how ManageEngine solves that, but I can tell you without a doubt we solve that 100%. We are not forcing you to go to someone else's computer and open up that can of worms for you using someone else's computer so you can reset your password and get into your own computer. That is not the way it's supposed to work, okay? But again, come to our AD seminars and we will show you exactly how to do that. Also, we'll have webinars on it. But these are some things that you really need to think about, okay? So as we move through these premium versions, you see that it adds more stuff. If you really want high-end security, you have to get Premium P2. This is where you get the risk-based conditional access and PIM. PIM is where you get JIT and GIA. So in order for you to actually get a secure Azure Active Directory environment, you have to go to P2. There's no other option. You can't just figure out how to do it. Those features and functions are not available unless you go to P2. So as you start moving to your hybrid environment, I want you to consider these things. And I want you to consider you will be in a hybrid for a while. So there's no reason for you to push everything to the cloud and administer from the cloud back to on-prem. My recommendation is for you to continue to manage things on-prem and push it to the cloud. That's the way that I'm going to suggest that you administer your hybrid Active Directory environment. Okay? Awesome. Well, now that we have a hybrid Active Directory environment, and let me show you what mine looks like. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things. First of all, I'm going to jump in here to my Azure Active Directory portal. Now, this is through, obviously, the internet. You'll see that I have my users here. I have my groups. I have all my different components that are here. And you'll see that some of these users were created in Azure Active Directory and some on-prem. Okay? Now, the other thing that I have is I have my on-prem Active Directory here, which you can see, let me pull up Active Directory users and computers. That's here, right? So here are my users. Here are my Azure administrators. You know, I have my OU structure. Everything is here. So this is my hybrid environment that I have, okay? So I can access both of these things through different portals. It's not a single pane of glass like we would like to have, but this is what we have. Now, once we get the on-prem and the Azure Active Directory running in a hybrid environment, we have a split logging system, right? The last Thursday, I went through the on-prem Active Directory auditing and tracking. Now I'm going to go through the Azure Active Directory auditing and monitoring, okay? Now, unlike on-prem Active Directory auditing, Azure is enabled by default. So it's automatically tracking everything that changes inside of Azure. The results show up in the audit logs in the Azure portal, okay? So again, I'm going to try to show you all this as we go through it. So here is my Azure Active Directory through my portal. If I come down here, you will see my audit logs looking very similar to the event viewer of what I have, okay? So this is what we have. We have some filtering capabilities. We also have some ability to run reports through PowerShell, and we have the ability to do some alerting, partially through PowerShell and partially if we have the upgraded premiums, because that's the only way to get alerting. So this is what we have for tracking. But we all know, just like if I send you back to my on-prem Active Directory, right? I mean, this is what we're kind of all familiar with. If I send you to my on-prem Active Directory and I tell you that all of your events are here under your security log, you're going to look at me like, really, that's what you're going to tell me to do? Because we all know that trying to look at a log of information is too complex. There's too much information. Well, I can tell you the same thing right here in my audit logs, because this is where the information is stored, very similar to what you have on-prem, okay? Now, the Azure auditing has some other limitations. First, each search is unique, meaning that if I go in and do a search, I move away from that browser view and I go back to that browser view, that search is gone. So it's kind of an ad hoc. When you need it, you go search, and you're not saving the searches. If you want to save searches, well, you use PowerShell, okay? There's no alerting built in the basic version. If you want to do alerting, again, you have to move into PowerShell in the premium versions, and you have to subscribe to these concepts. And there's no reporting built in. I mean, I challenge anyone to come in here to the Azure portal and try to run a report. Sure, I can get the information on screen, but notice here there is no, there's export to data settings, but that's not getting me the content. So this is where we have some I guess, stepping back in time, because at least inside of some of the Microsoft tools, we have some reporting, but inside of Azure, we just don't have those capabilities, okay? Then we come to the major roadblocks. How long does the data last? Well, if we look at free and basic, it lasts for 7 days. 7 days. That's it. Once we get into P1 and P2, we move to a whole 30 days. Now, how many of you in today's compliance world are going to be able to tell the external auditor, I'm sorry, we only have 30 days of information? That's just unacceptable, okay? So you're going to need solutions that help you with this. What Microsoft is going to tell you is if you need to archive information, you run PowerShell scripts and you archive it. That is not the way that I think we should do things. We've been doing that with on-prem Active Directory for 19 years. We've had tools, commands, commandlets, whatever, created so that we can offload the archiving. But that wasn't enough, was it? It never was enough. That's why we developed SIEM solutions, right? Security, event, monitoring. So we can archive this information and run reports on it. So this is some significant limitations, and we all understand why the limitations are here. It's because of data space, and Microsoft doesn't want to provide that data space. When we did it internally, we had to buy servers to do it. They could hold huge databases of information. Well, Microsoft's not willing to do that. They're saying 30 days and that's it, okay? Now, we also have other significant limitations. This is a direct quote from Microsoft, and instead of trying to I guess, code it, I just wanted to give it to you direct. In this quick start, so this is off of TechNet, you learn how to download audit logs for your tenant for the last 24 hours. You can download up to 5,000 records. Now, 5,000 records, okay? The most recent 5,000 records. To give you an idea of how small that is, I currently have 150,000 records on-prem, and this is a demo environment. So you're telling me that you're going to be able to get 5,000 records? Ooh, that's a whole lot. This is just, I hope you're seeing the limitations that if you try to use the Azure portal and you try to use what Microsoft is giving you for monitoring Azure Active Directory, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not getting the information you need, and now we're going to be in the same spot we are right now on-prem, which is we didn't take care of security because we couldn't get to the information. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through the possibilities similar to what you have on-prem because you need it for Azure Active Directory, okay? Core Azure Active Directory object changes, these are going to be your users and your groups. You need to know when users are created in Azure. You need to know when groups are modified in Azure. You need to know all these things, okay? If you're going to use the Azure portal for this, this is the best you have, okay? Now, I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want to know when a user activity is, let's see, I want to know when a user is created. Now to create application, let's see, I just want add user. Okay, so I want to create an add user for 1 month, apply. Okay, those are my users. So you can see that these are users I've created. Now this is a demo environment, so I don't have much in here. But how do I get this out? How do I ship this out? How do I get this list out? This is a problem, okay? So the same with group, right? So if I want to go in and I want to say, okay, I want to know when a group, Azure Active Directory group, and I want to know when a member was added. So I come in here and I get my list. Well, it's saying that nothing has been added. Well, I kind of need to know this information. So instead of using the Microsoft Azure portal, which has significant limitations, what I'm going to suggest that you do is you actually use a SIM solution that can get you this information quickly and in a format that's usable. So here you can see AD Audit Plus has an Azure Active Directory module. And all I have to do is for user management, if I want to know the recently created users, I come in here, this is my list of users, and now I can actually export this to a PDF. Boom, done, okay? Now, can I automate it? Of course I can automate it. Can I do it in Azure? Yes, you're going to use PowerShell. But how many of you are that proficient at PowerShell? Probably not too proficient. And that's for something that's been available for 13 years. PowerShell's been available for 13 years. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to automate this information, right? So that now I can go in and I can have scheduled reports. And these reports are automatically generated and they're dumped out and emailed to the right people. So I don't want to have to take the time to figure out PowerShell because that's a waste of my time. I want to be able to use a SIM solution, gathering my events, allowing me to look at reports, get alerts in real time, and also schedule those reports so I always have the information that I need. So this is possible inside of AD Audit Plus connecting to your Azure Active Directory environment, okay? So that's the first component. The second component is we can look at roles and administrators. Now, those of you that were with me last week, we had a full discussion on Active Directory groups that have privileges. Now, if we do a comparison, I'm going to jump into my on-prem Active Directory. And if I come down here to my users, you will see that I have domain admins, I have enterprise admins, I have schema admins. If I jump over here to built-in, I have administrators, backup operators, and this is where we can go in and using AD Audit Plus, we can set up for monitoring of these particular groups. Now, with these particular groups, right? So if I go to my favorite reports and I go to my privileged group modifications, I can look at the groups over the last 30 days that have changed that have privileges, okay? This is the on-prem way. But again, as I told you at the beginning, the Azure way is totally different. So the Azure way of doing something like this, again, if I jump back in here to my Azure environment, is I go to Azure Active Directory, and I have this node called Roles and Administrators. Now, these roles and administrators are a totally different way of viewing the environment, okay? So, for example, instead of a domain or enterprise admin, we have a global administrator. So the global administrator allows me to come in here, and I can see the members of the global administrator, okay? But how do I track changes to this? Well, again, the best bet you're going to have is if you come down here to your audit logs and you try to track it through here. Are you seeing the similarities to the limitations that you had in on-prem Active Directory for years, and now you have an Azure Active Directory? So for your roles and administrators, my recommendation is to go in and use AD Audit Plus, because it simply has a report built in for it. So it's that simple. So now what I can do, and I'll show you this in the live environment, is I can come in here to AD Audit Plus, and I can go to my role management. I can tell you members that were added to these roles. Now, what's funny is it's now called Global Administrator. I just showed you that. But Microsoft is still documented in their log as Company Administrator because that's what it used to be called. So you're going to have to do these translations. Because it's an operating system. I'm not even going to pick on Microsoft here. Because it's an operating system, you're going to have to learn the idiosyncrasies, and here's one of them. A global administrator equals a company administrator, and that's just the way it is, okay? But again, I can go in and I can set up alerts telling me when any role changes. One of the things for the last 4 years that I've been trying to push out to the Active Directory community is, as Active Directory administrators, we can no longer rely on reports to tell us when things change because it's too late. We need alerts to be able to go in and set up alert profiles. And you'll notice here, this is an alert profile for my Azure environment. And so I'm going to be able to track when these types of things change. I can create new alert profiles, and I can set up in my environment to know when these things change. This is vital for you to be able to see what's happening. Now, for the alerts inside of AD Audit Plus, you have 3 options of how those alerts are viewed. One, they're going to show up here on your dashboard, and you can see my new users that were created today show up on my dashboard. But I can also go in and I can have my alerts emailed or sent SMS, okay? Now, of course, if some things change, you can actually run scripts. That's not going to be very common, but at least we give you that option. So by using a SIM solution, AD Audit Plus, that's designed to gather events from the very limited Azure Active Directory audit logs, you're putting them in this database. When they come through the database, now you can actually see things that are happening by getting alerts on those changes. This is the power of using a SIM, okay? So at this point, we looked at users, created, deleted, modified, groups, created, deleted, modified, as well as roles and administrator configurations in Azure Active Directory. All of these are things that you can get alerts on when they change. But you can also move into applications. Now, as I described for you earlier, one of the main purposes of having Azure Active Directory is for identity and access control into SaaS applications. So what you need to have is you need to have a portal when someone adds a SaaS application, because this is really one of the main purposes of having Azure Active Directory. So here's where you can go in and now report on this. Now, if you go into Azure Active Directory, or you go into Azure, right, and you come here, you're going to have a different view of this. So here's your application registrations. Here's one for preview. Here's your enterprise applications. So you can see it's kind of shotgunned across your environment. And this becomes pretty complicated when things come and go. So this is an area that is somewhat complicated. And again, trying to track this information through your logs can become very cumbersome. It becomes very difficult, right? So here's my application. My activity is going to be add an application, and I'm going to apply this. It's not giving me the full view. Okay, why? It's limited. It is extremely limited in what it has. But if you go to like AD Audit Plus and you go to application management, you'll see here that I have the history of information that's going on, giving me full details in one view, right? So the consent to the application, when I add an application, when I set permissions on the applications, these are things that we need to see, because these are directly related to access to these resources through Azure Active Directory. Microsoft is going to tell you that you are going to run PowerShell commands to get similar information to what I'm going to show you here with a couple of clicks. I don't think that's the way we should do things. I know we're moving to a world of cloud and command, but many of us really understand the idea of a GUI and being able to click on a link and get the information that we need, instead of having to try to work through PowerShell commands to get that information, to squeeze that information out of the environment. So when you start getting involved with your hybrid environment, all of these components are things that you're going to have to deal with. What I do not want you to do is launch your hybrid environment, and because it's not readily available in Azure, you omit it from your daily tasks. Please don't do that. We've been doing that with on-prem for years, and it's got us into the situation we're in when we're being breached all the time. We want to try to keep Azure and our hybrid environment secure, and the only way to do that is to make sure that we are getting alerts on changes that are occurring. Okay? Now, license changes are also a critical aspect of Azure because it's a pay per use. And if we have users that have licenses to applications and they're not using them, that becomes a problem. So what we need to do is we need to know when things change. And we also need to be able to run reports on what people currently have, okay? So this license concept becomes important. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you need to view this information. First of all, if I come in here and I can show you my license management, and so recently licensed changed users, okay? So I can change things by user or group, and these are all the changes that have occurred for my users. Now you got to keep in mind that AD Audit Plus is the way that we look at changes that have occurred. But if we want to actually look at the way things are today, that's when we're going to go in and we're going to use AD Manager Plus. And AD Manager Plus has the ability for us to view through reports on our Office 365 reporting, which includes licensed users. Okay, so here's where we can see licensed and unlicensed users of our Office 365 environment. Now, I'm not going to jump into it, but we also have another product called Office 365 Manager Plus, which goes into even more details. So you have a variety of different solutions, all under the AD 360 suite that we provide, that gives you control over a hybrid environment, including detailed information and management within certain components. Okay? So licensing becomes very important. We need to know who has what now, and when something changes, we have to be able to see those changes. If we look at the Azure portal for this, this becomes very complicated. So here are Azure Active Directory, and here are our license management inside of Azure Active Directory. Now this just says, you know, we have no problems. It's really not helpful. It's not telling me the full story. Again, with everything that you want to get reports out of Azure, Microsoft is going to tell you to use PowerShell to do that. Okay? Now, another area are Azure Active Directory logons. One of the areas that we have really exceeded in our tracking is in AD Audit Plus for on-prem is our logons. Because what we want to be able to see is we want to be able to see when we're under attack. So we want to know the logon failures. We want to be able to look at this information, okay? Similarly, inside of Azure, we need to do the same thing. So if I go to my Azure portal and I look at my logs and my sign-ins, right? So here are my sign-ins, and here's where I can filter. So I have to come in and I have to filter this information, right? So this kind of gives me a view similar to what I'm showing you. However, this is just kind of a single point view of the information, where if I send you to the Azure AD SIM in AD Audit Plus, for my logon reports, I can look at overall logon activity. I can look at logon failures due to password. Then I get to more detailed information about logons when it's coming from a particular IP address or a particular application. So this is possible inside of Azure AD with PowerShell, but it's not possible with normal Azure AD because it doesn't give you the breadth of information. And as you saw earlier, some of the auditing of logon information isn't available until you get to basic and beyond. So even the free version doesn't give you this. Everything that you see here can be alerted. Not everything is alerted by default, but everything that you see here can be associated with an alert, and it's that simple. So depending on what you're looking for, this is areas where you can come in and you can actually up the game on what you need to look at from your Azure Active Directory environment. But Microsoft is going to tell you the way that you get information out of Azure are through PowerShell commands, okay? So that kind of gives you an overview of Azure, auditing, the licensing in Azure, and then what's possible through the Azure portal, what's limited, and then what's possible with the SIM solution that actually exposes all of these reports and alerts and those critical areas that you need to track, okay? So this concludes our series on managing and securing a hybrid Active Directory environment. I hope it's been very useful to you. There are 4 in this series. If you, for some crazy reason, didn't get links to these 4, send me an email or send the events team an email and we can get you those links. I do encourage you to keep up with us as we go through the year and add more information. I'm currently working on a white paper with regard to hybrid authentications and password changes, including multi-factor authentication. This is really an area that I think is important for organizations to understand on what's going to be the best scenario. So I'm writing up a white paper on that to kind of give you the secret decoder ring on that. So keep an eye out for our resources, our events. Hopefully this is very useful to you. Please send us feedback. If you have any direct questions for me, there's my email address. The questions that came through, I want to thank my colleagues for taking those questions. I don't see any outstanding questions, so we're good. And until the next time we have another webinar, which I think is for me anyway, probably a month out, I want to thank you. Hopefully I see you at an event. And if I don't see you at an event, I will see you at a webinar, I'm sure. And for myself and the rest of the AD Solutions team here at ManageEngine, have a great rest of your day, and thank you very much.